Thanks a lot for this presentation. I will share my screen. Okay. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to put my screen. Okay, so first of all, I would like to acknowledge the land on which the Université Laval operates and where I'm located. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, and now it is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. So first of all, maybe a little bit about who am I. So my training is in public health. I have a PhD in public health, health promotion specialization, and my background before that is in social science. I have a research-oriented position here at Université Laval. As it was said, my research program is really around improving healthcare access for Indigenous population and health science pedagogy also. Since 2013, I have been involved first as a postdoc with different Indigenous community around project focusing on diabetes prevention, but also cultural safety in healthcare. And on a personal note, I'm a mother of two and I'm of settler descent. This presentation has three objectives. So the first one is to familiarize participant with integrated knowledge translation, so IKD. The second objective is to demonstrate how IKD is well suited for Indigenous health research. And finally, I would like to present an example of an Indigenous health project based on IKD. And I should declare that I'm not a KD researcher. I don't consider myself as a KD researcher. So I hope I'm not saying anything silly today, but the way that I see my research is being congruent with IKD approach. So I hope that it's going to be helpful for you to understand this approach. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you are with Indigenous health research, so I'm going to start with some really basics about this kind of research. In Canada, Indigenous is the acceptable or accepted term that is used to refer to First People, and by this we mean people of long settlement who were there first at contact. In Canada, Indigenous people comprises First Nation, Métis, and Inuit population, which represent roughly 4.9% of the national population. And Indigenous population are not a monolithic population. They have very different cultural backgrounds. There's over 600 recognized community or band, each with distinctive culture, language, art, and music in Canada. However, Indigenous people across Canada share a similar history of oppression and marginalization, and they experience important social and health inequalities or inequity. And a large number of authors and study has pointed to colonialism as the meta-determinant, the meta-health determinant for these health inequities. So the continuing impacts of colonialism and its lasting effect on health determinant and access to health services. But what is important to know is that colonialism or colonization not only involve settlement, but also colonization of knowledge system. So with the assertion of sovereignty over Indigenous land, there was also an assertion of the superiority of Western knowledge systems, which have been presented as the only valid frame to produce knowledge. And so for years, settler research in Indigenous setting rarely involved the participation of concerned Indigenous communities in research. So these communities had no control over the research methods. They had no access to result interpretation or to any benefits that might emerge from the research. And this is one of the reasons why, for many Indigenous communities, Western scientific research was and is still sometimes viewed as an instrument of oppression and of colonization over Indigenous population. So this is really important to understand this, this context of Indigenous health research. So in the last decades, many initiatives have emerged from within academia, and these initiatives aimed at establishing the key principle of research with Indigenous communities, calling for more respect, for more equity, and for more reciprocity in research. And from within Indigenous nations themselves, there were strong research governance protocols that have been developed, and these protocols aimed at priorities their own identified needs rather than responding to the external demands of researchers. So all these initiatives encourage a shift to more participatory, more community-based, culturally appropriate and action-oriented research approach. And today, the chapter 9 of the TCPS, so for those of you who don't know TCPS, it's the Three Council Policy Statement, which has been defined by the three main funding bodies in Canada. And that defines a principle for research in different contexts. So chapter 9 is focused on research involving First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people of Canada. And it stipulates some principles such as seeking Indigenous engagement from communities, organizations, and governing authorities in research, building on participatory approach to research, jointly defining the level of engagement of different entities in research, considering the view of the different sectors in the research process, fostering mutual benefits in research, respecting the relevant custom and code of research, so the protocols that I just evoked that apply in specific communities, and defining an engagement plan and setting out a research agreement with the involved communities. So all these principles relate to some point, in some aspect, to knowledge production and knowledge translation. So this is important to put this in context to really understand why integrated knowledge translation is well suited to this kind of research. So I don't know if you're familiar either with integrated knowledge translation. So some basic about this approach. See, this is an approach to doing research that apply the principle of knowledge translation, but to the entire research process. And the central premise of IKD is that involving knowledge user as equal partner alongside researcher will lead to research that is more relevant to and more likely to be useful to the knowledge user. So it resonates particularly well with Indigenous health research principle because it overlaps with participatory research approach, as we have seen, which are really encouraged when working with Indigenous communities or partners. So as I said, IKT builds on collaboration or participation with knowledge user at every or at most stage of the project. The minimum requirement for IKT is that researcher and knowledge user make joint decision to shape the research question, to interpret the study findings together, and that they work together to craft the message around the result and move the research result into practice. And in some situations, this partnership is also extended so that knowledge users also take part in deciding the research methodology, the tools development, and the data collection methods, strategies. And so, as you may guess, it involves really meaningful engagement of knowledge user, and this engagement should be maintained through different mechanisms throughout the research process. And also it requires explicit strategies to incorporate the expertise of knowledge user throughout the research process. There are many advantages to IKT, and for instance, is that the knowledge user are the real expert or of their own needs, so they really know what question should be answered, what is useful for them. They bring different knowledge, skill, insight to the research team. They have a unique understanding of the result, which may be different than that of the researcher, and they are well positioned to move these results into practice. And just to compare a little bit IKT with the traditional KT, and we could call it end of grant KT. For instance, in IKT, as I said, knowledge users are engaged and integrated throughout the research process, but in traditional KT, knowledge users are engaged mostly at the end of the research process. In IKT, the knowledge user take part in joint governance of about the research project, while in a more traditional approach of KT, the researcher is the one who controls the research process. And IKT sometimes is viewed as more problem-based, while end of grant KT is more curiosity-driven or more is more led by academic consideration about knowledge gap and all those kind of things. So as you may guess, there are also some challenge to IKT, and I would say that the first one is that the knowledge user are often involved in research projects in addition to their usual workload in their organization. They are not always paid for their work in the project. So this is a barrier. And one way to overcome this barrier is to have a dialogue with their institution, with their organization, to bring about small change in their job mandates and to find some way to compensate their time in the project and to accommodate their schedule. When arranging meetings, for instance. Another challenge is that knowledge user can quit their job position and leave the environment that their expertise is linked to. So this is really important to have an ongoing commitment from the organization so that they have someone or a solution when someone leaves, they have a replacement or something like that. Most of the time, knowledge users are from a non-academic world, so sometimes it may be hard to understand well the lingo of the researcher and all the scientific things such as methodology. So training is key, and also developing a common language is key. And knowledge users should be in a position to act on results and to influence decision-making in their environment. Otherwise, it's really frustrating for everyone involved in the project. So now I'm going to present an example of a NICAD research project of my own. So this project is focused on culturally safe care of Atikamekw patients. And this is a photo of Manawan, which is one of the Atikamekw community in Quebec. So before explaining the project, I have to describe where this project comes from, because it really makes sense with the NICAD approach, where knowledge users are involved from the start and are integrated in the team from the start. So this project was based on a pilot project that was conducted in 2017 and 2018. And the objective of the pilot project was to identify potential barriers and enablers to cultural safety in healthcare provided to Atikamekw living with diabetes in Quebec, Canada. So the pilot study was a participatory research conducted in partnership with Manawan, which is an Atikamekw community, in partnership also with the Family Medicine Teaching Clinic at Joliette, who provide services to the community, and with the Native Friendship Center of Joliette. And the pilot study built on qualitative, descriptive design and involved conducting talking circle with different actors. So we had talking circle with Atikamekw patient, and we had also talking circle with health professional of the teaching, the Family Medicine Teaching Clinic, to really seek insight on the struggle Indigenous patients face when they interact with health organization, and to generate ideas for practical solutions that could enhance cultural safety within clinical encounters and health organization. And if you're interested in this study, this is the article that was that is drawn from the result of the study that was published in healthcare, in health expectations, sorry. So the pilot study has concluded with a deliberative workshop with different knowledge users and stakeholders. So we had patient partner, we had health professionals, we had decision makers from health organization and representative from the friendship centers. And the workshop allowed to really discuss together the result with all the stakeholders and to prioritize some potential solution. And at the end of the workshop, the participant agreed on a solution, which was to develop and implement an intervention involving a new professional role dedicated to cultural safety in healthcare organization. Following the workshop, we defined in a preliminary way the objective of a new research project with the Indigenous partners. And there we decided to invite the two other Atikamekw communities, because this pilot project only involved Manawan. So we decided to invite the two other sister communities, and also the Atikamekw Nation Council, which is the organism that kind of supersede many issues for the three communities. And we wanted to give priority to Indigenous voice to discuss the problems at hand before reaching out to the stakeholders in the health system. And so we approached the community council that act as the authority for each community. And the research project was presented and agreed upon through formal collaboration agreements. And a little bit of context. So you have to know that the Atikamekw communities are located in territories that are served by 3 different regional health and social service authorities. So the 3 Atikamekw community are Obijwan, Wemontashi, and Manawan. And they are all in different region. And following the presentation to the band council of this community, we also met with the regional authorities, and formal agreement were also defined with these organizations. And a representative from each regional authority was delegated to take part in the project team and to serve as the contact person in the project. And so there is the new project, which is funded by CIHR. So, bon, in French, it's transformer les modèles de soins pour favoriser la sécurisation culturelle offerte aux patients autochtones. So, as I said, it is a participatory research project conducted in partnership with the Atikamekw Nation, so the 3 communities and the Conseil de la Nation, and with the CIS de Lanaudière, CIUS Mauricie Centre du Québec, and CIUS Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, which are the regional health and social services authorities. So the objective of this new project reflects the solution that was identified at the workshop with all the stakeholders. And it is to co-develop on the basis of a participatory approach, a new model of intervention in order to increase cultural safety for Atikamekw patients in the health system. In addition, this research respect and upholds the principles established by the First Nation Assembly, which is the code of research accepted by the community partners. So before earlier, I talked about the research protocol that are accepted by the community. So this one was the research code that is accepted by the community partners. And this protocol stipulates specific principles regarding ownership, control, access, and possession of the data. And that's why the OCAP, so ownership, control, access, and possession. And also of research result by the community partner. So basically these principles frame knowledge utilization in a very empowering way for partners, for community partners. And it implies that First Nation control data collection process in their communities, and that they own, protect, and control how their information is used and how the result from the research is used. So each step of the research is based on a transparent process with the partners and the community involved. So again, it is really congruent with an IKT approach. So you know that we need to develop mechanism of joint governance for IKT research. So in this research project, it involved partnership with academic, Indigenous, and health services actors. So we decided to adopt a ternary structure of governance inside the project to facilitate the dialogue and knowledge translation between the 3 entities embodied by the research team, the advisory committee, and the regional health and social services authorities. So this is a representation, a visual representation of how we envision the joint governance of the project. Each of these distinct partners bring crucial and specific expertise to the project. So, for instance, the research team bring scientific and theoretical expertise related to cultural safety and to the organization of care. The advisory committee bring the lived experience of Atikamekw culture and concept of health, and also their experience of the healthcare system as patient, but also as health professional. Because I forgot to mention, but the advisory committee is formed, yeah, it builds on representative of each of the communities and the Atikamekw Nation Council. So there's someone who's also represent the Atikamekw Nation Council. So this is a committee that is formed by really the representative from the community partners, but some people in this committee, sorry, are also health professional in their own community. So they have multiple hats, but they are all Atikamekw. And finally, the third type of expertise that is broad is the practical experience and knowledge of the particular organizational context, and also related administrative or implementation constraint of the healthcare system, which is brought by the organizational partners through the representatives that are delegated to take part in the project. The approach of the project, basically, we have envisioned 3 steps. So the first step is consists in the development of a logic model of intervention with the advisory committee, and with the input also of organizational partners, but we really wanted to develop a model of cultural safety from the perspective of the Atikamekw. So the priority in the development is really on the Atikamekw perspective. And in order to develop this logic model, we use an approach that is called two-eyed seeing. So where we try to merge scientific, I would say Western scientific knowledge with cultural knowledge, experiential knowledge of the community partners. So yeah, we try to bring all these kind of knowledge and expertise to develop something that will be really, that really fit an Atikamekw perspective of cultural safety. So, and the second step is the presentation of this model at a community forum. So once the model is developed, we will present it at a forum to gather the perspective of a broad base of actors around the model, around its acceptability. And finally, once we will have a final version of the model, of the logic model for the intervention, we will develop the practical modalities of the intervention mostly with the organizational partners where the intervention will be implemented. So for now, we're still at the first phase. We have been impacted by the pandemic a little bit, and also by the fact that people from the advisory committee are, as I said, they are also health professional in their own community. So it's really hard for them to, it was really hard for them to manage all the pandemic related and the public health measure at the same time with the project. So we had a little bit, we took a little bit of the retard, but yeah, so we're still at this first phase, but we are close to our final logic model of intervention. And I just wanted to present some of the mechanism in this project for knowledge translation to be really integrated and to flow from one entity to the other, and for knowledge to be shared and expertise to be shared and used. So we have many mechanisms. So as I said, there's an advisory committee with representation from the 3 Atikamekw community. And this committee oversees and takes an active role in all steps of the project. And it acts as a link between the research team and also the community at large and the community council. We have another mechanism to interact with the regional authorities. So where representatives from these authority are invited to attend some of the advisory committee meetings. And we as a research team also do frequent contact with these people to and follow up the progress of the project. Yeah, so the frequent reports on project progress, mutual sharing of information with all the partners, and it sometimes involve some informal channels. And we also try to do annual gatherings with all involved stakeholders. So at the end of September, we will have one of these gatherings. For now, we were only able to have a virtual gathering, unfortunately, but we really hope that we'll be able to do this gathering in person at the end of September, and it will be on the Atikamek territory, and we will try to favor outside activities to engage also with the territory. And there's also the forum that I presented in the previous slide. I think this forum can be seen as a mechanism to gather the perspective of a broad base of actors. So not only people who are engaged in the advisory committee or in the, so to gather more largely the perspective of the community partner and the organizational partners. So that's it. I think I'm done. I went a little bit faster than expected. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Plenty of time for questions. So I will monitor the chat in case anyone's got a question. And so there is one already. I'll read it out loud. Oh, it's a long question. So congratulations, Dr. Tremblay, for an excellent presentation. I'm concerned about your experiences with the KT pilot project. Is there any lessons you've learned that have been either helpful for yourself or can be helpful for others who are considering engaging in KT stakeholders that are focused on Indigenous traditional healing and medicine or access to culturally safe healthcare through potential involvement of Indigenous traditional healers, elder knowledge holders, or Indigenous healthcare workers in Indigenous communities? I'm curious about the ethical issues from your pilot project. So to summarize, I'm wondering, Dr. Tremblay, if you have any lessons that you've learned or tips that you might be able to share for the audience based on the pilot project, for those who are maybe considering engaging with Indigenous communities around traditional health services.
Yeah, I would say to always try to prioritize the voice of the community. This is something really important because we're working in a context where there's colonialism. So this research could be seen as an attempt to decolonize. So I think we have to start from the perspective of the community, partners of the community, the Indigenous people. And that would be a first listen. The deliberative workshop was a great way, I think, to share and really discuss together all the potential solution that could be that could be put in place to follow up on the result of the project. And I thought that it was really something fundamental in the origin of the second project. And I'm not sure about the ethical issue, what this person referred to.
Maybe they can follow up with you
Yeah.
after, because the Tri-Council policies were listed in your slide, and somebody also asked whether the presentation slides will be available for everyone. And I think that KT Canada does keep them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, I can share them, of course. So we try to really respect all the ethical consideration for research with Indigenous population, both in the pilot project and in the main project. This is something really, really important for us. Yeah.
We have another question from, and I'm pronouncing it the Anglo way, I guess, Stephen Gentles. Very helpful presentation, thank you. Can you talk more about your relationship or partnership with the Akitimak Nation and its communities and how it came about?
Yeah, this is really interesting actually, because the family medicine teaching clinics in Joliet that I evoked, and that is part of the pilot study. This is the idea of the project, the pilot project, come from them actually, but it was framed in a very different way. So they were, the problem that was posed was okay, we have a lot of Indigenous patients, but we have many difficulties in following up with them, and we want to understand why. And then so I took this concern, and I said, okay, we are going to see what is the perspective of the community about this, and what is the perspective of the Native Friendship Center. So before realizing the first pilot study, I went to meet with all these partners, and we kind of reframed the question to see what are the barriers and what are the barriers and sorry, I don't remember the word, the levers of action to improve the access to culturally safe care. So the consideration for cultural safety came mostly from the community partners, and they say maybe why they have difficulties in doing a follow-up is because there's a problem with the care that is offered, or so we kind of reframe it this way. And I don't remember the other question.
I think that you hit that one, and Karen Rideout also had a question that I think you've answered. I would also like to hear more about the initiation and development of your partnership with the communities and the process used to identify research foci or priorities. I think you covered that.
Yeah, that's I think I kind of answered this, but so as I said, yeah, the needs was first formulated by people from the health organization, but then we kind of try to explore this in another way with all the people involved. So I have been through my postdoc, I have been involved with Ganawage, and it was a good school for me because I was really introduced to participatory research. So for me, Indigenous research or Indigenous health research go along with participatory research. So when I heard those concerns from the health organization, I said, oh, okay, we must do something more participatory. So it should not only come from one of the actor, it should come from all the concerned actors. So that's why we kind of designed this project this way.
And another very interesting question from an individual whose name, I'm sorry, I don't think I will do it justice, Mr. or Ms. Dior. What kind of issues do you face during meetings or collaborations? Do the participants need some accommodation to participate, like maybe language or connections?
No, it's a good question, because actually the Atikamekw people, mostly they speak Atikamekw first. This is their main language, and then they learn French at school, but it's still a second language for them. So sometimes there might be difficulties in communicating because of this. So there's the first thing, but I think it's really important in every participatory research project to make an effort to simplify the language that is used, especially when you're working with people who are outside of the academic community, but also when you are working with people whose French are not their main their first language. Yes, this was one of the first consideration that we had for the connection. Now most of the community are well connected, but it's true that once it was a problem, and I remember having meeting like Zoom meeting with people, but some of them could not participate through the internet. They had to call the meeting, so it was really not ideal. So I would say that something really important is always to favor in-person meetings, to develop the link, the trusting relationship, which are really central to those kind of projects. And it also will help with all the other communication problems that can happen. But yeah.
A question from Monique Lefebvre. What do you mean by culturally safe or appropriate healthcare? Is it in the way healthcare services are offered, or is it in the actual services offered? For example, would rebirthing ceremonies be something that could be offered to deal with the impacts left over from residential schools?
Mm-hmm. So cultural safety is a tricky concept because there's no consensus now how to define this concept. There's some people see it more as a process along a continuum, starting from cultural awareness, etc. But and some other people see it more as a result that is achieved, and also that is felt by the patient when they receive care that really meet their needs. In this project, we consider cultural safety as a transformational process. So we see cultural safety as a care that, so a transformation of healthcare that allow to better take into account the particular needs, the particular rights, and the particular cultural identities of the Atikamekw patients, and also healthcare that are free from racism and free from discrimination. It is really, really important, especially in the aftermath of Joyce Echaquan's death. Because rebirthing ceremony, yeah, so I think that health services to be culturally safe need to be redesigned with the Indigenous community that receive these services, and this is what we are trying to do in this project. So it is something that really need a transformation. Rebirthing ceremony, I'm not sure what we're talking about, but we also did a rapid review in the context of this project to see what existing in terms of culturally safe healthcare, and what we can see, there's different strategy to transform the healthcare, and some of them involve integrating elders in healthcare teams so they can also provide traditional health services. This is something that we also kind of consider, but we're not at this point. But so yes, this can be a strategy, but I would really emphasize the importance of a partnership, developing partnership to rethink, to redesign the health services.
Thank you. So from Shavana Kapadia, hi, Dr. Tremblay. One of the challenges you identified was that non-academic knowledge users might lack the scientific and methodological training to fully understand the lingo of the researchers. Any suggestions how to address this challenge? Thank you.
Yes, I think that training can be a good solution, but there's also sometimes we also forget that training is also for the researcher, because we all have different expertise. And so the researcher have the scientific expertise, but we don't have the cultural expertise. We don't have the lived experience. So training is bidirectional, and should be done in a capacity development way, really. And another strategy could be, as I said, to try to simplify the language that is used, to try to develop a common language. So when you see that a word resonate more with the knowledge user, you can try to emphasize this word instead of another word that you would be using. Yeah, I think capacity building is the key, and for all the partners, and not only for the knowledge user. And something that we also need to understand is that those kind of participatory research are long-term process. So in this case, we had a pilot project, and then we had a larger project. And some of the people that were there in the pilot project are still there, and they are learning through all these projects. And the goal would be to have after that another project to go further, and so people, the knowledge user, the community partners, also learn through this sequence of project. This is really a long-term development, a lifelong learning thing, I think.
All right, we have time for another question or two. If anyone else wants to write something in the chat or just unmute themselves to ask the question. Or you can raise your hand as well. So I'm not seeing anything here. Oh, okay, yes. So here's a question. Did you travel much, and was it before COVID? Like travel to the communities?
Yeah, I think engaging with people in the territory is really, really important. And I did travel a lot before COVID. And now, as you might guess, it is really a challenge, especially when working with Indigenous community, because they were impacted in a particular way by the COVID, and also because they they put in place measure to close themselves to the foreigner, and that was perfectly it made perfectly sense, but it was a challenge for us to get engaged with them, because we had the Zoom meeting, but it's not the same thing, and you cannot really understand the context of a community if you're not going, if you're not seeing where the people live, what the community look like. So yeah, so yes, I did travel, but now it's a little bit challenging.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're at the end of our session. I don't see any more questions or any hands. Let me just double check the second panel of individuals here. Nope. Okay. So I want to thank everyone for attending the seminar, and I'm going to ask if everyone could please thank or join me in thanking our presenter for such an enlightening presentation.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
So I just have a last reminder before you sign off. Please don't forget to complete the online evaluation. The next webinar is for Thursday, October the 14th, with Dr. Maria Fernandez from the University of Texas, and she will be discussing implementation mapping.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kutari, for moderating, and thank you, Dr. Tremblay, for the wonderful presentation, and thanks to everyone for joining us and for all your great questions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.